The main thing I took away from an extended play session with Star Wars Outlaws was a new understanding of its focus. Most Star Wars games are action titles, where you fight against scores of enemies using blasters, lightsabers, thermal detonators, and any number of vehicles. Star Wars Outlaws, on the other hand, is a stealth game, where combat is best avoided and shooting your way out of a situation is a scrambling, desperate affair that doesn't often end well. I recently played about 4 hours of Star Wars Outlaws at a preview event that was meant to show how the game functions as a quest-driven open world. Our play session started just after protagonist Kay Vess and her pet alien buddy Nix crash on the planet Toshara, seemingly just after a tutorial-ish chapter in which Kay stole a ship from a crime boss and, in doing so, acquired a death mark that would follow her across the galaxy. Within a few seconds of landing, things got heated, as Kay wandered out of the ship only to find a Rodian fleeing with some bandits. After taking them out, we learned this guy is Waka, that he's a mechanic, and that he would fix the ship, named the Trailblazer, he quickly discovered, since you helped him out. These plot developments happened at breakneck speed, with barely 30 seconds elapsing between meeting Waka and him sending Kay to the nearby city of Miragana to talk to Gorak, the local underboss of the Pike Syndicate, to get some work and buy some parts to fix the ship. That was the pervasive feeling throughout the play session. In fact, everything happened at a weirdly fast pace, as the game seems to whisper, "Hey kid, wanna do some space crimes?" and hustles you into the action of completing jobs, discovering missions, and double-crossing your employers for a few more credits. Your first job is to find your way to Gorak, who's hanging out in a private suite above a cantina. There are a few ways to get to him, and I got the impression that Star Wars Outlaws is trying to capture a light immersive sim feel by providing you with several possible solutions to a problem and letting you figure out which is the best on your own. You can try to buy your way in, thanks to a guy who is offering to sell an invite to the suite. Alternatively, I found someone working on a power conduit for the elevator, who Kay could try to talk into opening the door for her. Instead, I discovered a vent I could open using Kay's data spike, which is essentially a hacking device and lockpick. Opening the vent got me into the elevator, which got me up to Gorak, but he promptly threw her out for being too new and untrustworthy, essentially saying I needed to earn some more reputation points with the Pikes first. But just getting up to the suite was enough to catch the attention of a broker named Danica. Her job, from a client she won't name, is to sneak into Pike territory and steal some data off of Gorak's computer. The Pike territory gives you a crash course in outlaw stealth of skulking around walls and crates to avoid enemy sightlines. Nix, your alien pet companion, is essential in all of Outlaw's gameplay. While sneaking, you can use Nix to open distant doors, distract enemies, and steal things without Kay leaving cover. He adds range to your ability to interact with the environment, and I quickly found that any problem that didn't seem to have an immediate solution probably had a Nix solution. Another major part of Outlaw's gameplay, especially when sneaking through locations such as this, is the kind of environmental climbing puzzles you'll find in something like the Uncharted games or Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Finding climbable walls and swinging over gaps with a grappling hook is a major part of navigating the world and how you'll find paths to help you avoid getting spotted. But the climbing also feels fairly rote. There's nothing in these traversal mechanics that hasn't popped up in other third-person action games for a decade or more. Finally, I hit the Pike Stronghold. The mechanics here are familiar Ubisoft fare. You can use binoculars to tag enemies, which lets you track them as they move around the area, sabotage alarm panels so nobody can call for backup, slip past people and security cameras by hiding in tall grass, and take people out in one hit if you sneak up on them. Nix adds a fresh element to these familiar ideas, and the levels are designed so that you have to use Nix smartly to keep yourself out of trouble. The goal here is to sneak through and open a door shielded by a force field. Outlaws didn't tell me how to deal with the force field, but instead required me to figure it out myself. Electrical wires from the door led to generators you could blast or send Nyx to dismantle, opening the way. Although, while I figured out quickly that I was meant to follow the power lines, I didn't realize sometime exactly which objects I could interact with or how to disable them. And in that time, I got spotted and had to fight. Combat in Outlaws is interesting in that it feels significantly different from that of most Star Wars games. Kay is a crack shot, and although you can upgrade her blaster with parts to hot swap between different gunfire types that are good for specific functions, like shooting organic enemies, zapping droids, or knocking people out with a stun, her gun isn't particularly powerful. Luckily, you can also grab the weapons off downed enemies, allowing you a short-lived upgrade to your assault or sniper rifle as long as the gun has ammo. You also have an ability called Adrenaline, which charges while you're in combat. Using it lets you slow down time to tag several enemies and then eliminate them all in a single rapid-fire action like in Splinter Cell Blacklist. Fights aren't particularly hard, but they did get harrowing for me because, at least early on, Kay can't take many hits at all. It's pretty clear that Outlaws doesn't generally want you to get into straight fights where you're outnumbered, and instead takes a more realistic approach to what these gunfights would be like. It seems like you're meant to kill an enemy or two, or use Nyx to jump on someone who spots you so you can take them out fast, and then hustle back into hiding and try again. Things can go bad so quickly though that my time with Outlaws got a bit frustrating. A couple missions later, Kay infiltrates an Imperial space station on another job. Crossing a huge hangar, I finally reached the door I was supposed to sneak through, only to get spotted by one of the last troopers I hadn't noticed and have the whole place descending on me in an instant. It made it pretty obvious that stealth was really the only viable option. I ran through the same room several times, having to repeat big, slow sections of it over and over if I ever messed up. Eventually, I got to the last stormtrooper. I abandoned being clever and just stunned him, hoping to unlock the exit door before someone spotted his body. Back in the Pike base, I eventually made my way through the force field door and stole the data from Gorak's terminal, where I also discovered his second in command was selling him out to the Empire. After returning to Danka, I met the client we were working for, a member of the rival Crimson Dawn gang. Here, Outlaws gives you a taste of another major element of your life of crime, its reputation system. You can either give the info on the traitor to Gorak, initiating yourself with the Pikes, or hand it over to Crimson Dawn for a rep boost with them. Balancing how everyone feels about you seems like it'll be central to the game, although I only got a brief sense of it. Being in good with Crimson Dawn will probably make other factions like you less, but it unlocks some benefits, like discounts with certain vendors and the ability to enter the gang's territory without getting shot. I gave the data to Crimson Dawn, and then used my newfound respectability in the very next mission, which had me trying to acquire a blaster upgrade that was necessary for another burglary. You can steal it from the Pikes or Crimson Dawn. I went with ripping off my new allies, since they would now let me waltz almost right up to their vault. After some careful sneaking through a restricted area, I nabbed the part and slipped back out without anyone being the wiser. From what I saw, just about every mission where you steal something valuable or do a job for a faction gives you a binary choice that's an opportunity for betrayal, allowing you to risk or blow your reputation gains and reverse your losses. In that later mission on the Imperial Space Station, the goal was to wipe data on Gorak's debts to the Empire to frame him. But I also had the option to wipe the Crimson Dawn's debts, framing them instead, before heading back to Gorak for a bigger payday. I didn't get the chance to see exactly how you'll navigate these relationships over the long term, or how outcomes will play out depending on whether Kay chooses loyalty or betrayal, but I suspect it'll carry weight in how the story unfolds. Miragana itself is surrounded by rolling plains and dotted with small towns and homesteads. Like the city itself, you can explore all this stuff freely on a speeder you unlock right after your run-in with Waka, finding additional tasks to complete or random events to interfere with. One of the cooler elements of Star Wars Outlaws is that while someone will often offer you a job, quests don't always fall in your lap. You might overhear a conversation between two thieves as they discuss where they left their haul of goods, giving you an opportunity to go jack it before they show up. Or find an email from a company explaining to someone that crashing their speeder puts it out of warranty, offering you the chance to track down the wreck and see what you can salvage. I particularly like that Outlaws usually trust you to figure these elements out yourself. When I went looking for the goods that the pair of thieves mentioned, I found their stash behind a waterfall, but one of their associates had already moved it. So I had to figure out where it went and how to get to it. There seems to be lots of open world tasks of varying levels of complexity, both on Toshara and the second planet we visited, Kajimi, the snowy city world last seen in The Rise of Skywalker. On the trip between them, I engaged in some space battles, fighting off Crimson Dawn fighters attacking cargo ships flown by civilians, and snagging cargo off wrecks floating in orbit. A lot of these little tasks feels fairly standard in a game like this, but the density means there's plenty of reason to explore. While I liked much of my time with Star Wars Outlaws, it did sometimes feel rushed, undercutting the immersion into the Star Wars universe. Much of my interaction with the early story felt a bit hokey. The stealth gameplay I liked a lot more. It's exciting to play a Star Wars game that takes the danger of the universe seriously and forces you to be quick and clever, rather than just blast or slash your way through everything. My major struggle was that it could be tough to understand exactly what you're able to do, and I often felt unsure of what I could interact with in a given area. I appreciated that the game left me to figure out what I needed to do instead of just slapping a waypoint on it, but it sometimes left me floundering to figure out what to do next. Combat, too, felt a little loose, at least in this slice, mostly because I wasn't particularly sure how I was supposed to deal with the situation going badly without taking a ton of damage. Outlaws doesn't seem to handle these emergency moments especially well. But when you can execute a smart, sneaky plan using all of your tools, especially Nick's, the gameplay is exciting and rewarding. This was just a short look at an enormous game, however, so the question to be answered is how well Outlaws brings these things together for the player as it teaches you how to play with tutorial elements and a better explanation of what's going on. More than anything though, Star Wars Outlaws felt huge to me, and there's fun and a lot of potential in getting lost in a sprawling Star Wars underworld.